Chapter 6, Part 13, The Virginia Horton Case. The most frightening part of the abduction experience is when the abductee is paralyzed and at the same time the aliens approach him or her. And Virginia still didn't remember any details of her encounter. It seems that her unconscious mind censored out the bad part. And Budd Hopkins begins talking about the Betty and Barney Hill case in 1961. And the Hills were driving through New Hampshire on the White Mountains, and they saw a moving light that was moving slowly and that was following them. And eventually they were influenced to drive off the highway, and they stopped their car and they were approached by a group of men, basically the aliens. And Betty is led to the UFO, which landed, and as she was walking to the UFO, she sees that Barney is left behind and he's being assisted by the aliens. And then she began screaming like, "Barney, wake up!" And he seemed to be asleep. And under hypnosis, Barney said that he felt that he was floating, and he did not remember that Betty was calling him. And he noticed that the next morning the top of his shoes were scuffed, and when he went under hypnosis, he remembered that he was being dragged up the ramp and into the UFO. And Budd notices that there's two different treatments here that the aliens were doing. The first one was Barney Hill, which was a large and well-built man, is rendered almost senseless and almost unconscious, and he's dragged aboard the UFO. But Betty Hill is a female and she's smaller, so she's walked aboard the UFO and remains conscious throughout the encounter. And this pattern continues inside the UFO. Barney barely remembers anything of the examination, that he's barely conscious. But Betty is fully awake and she's able to communicate with the aliens. And Betty was able to communicate to the point that she's able to ask the aliens about their origins, and she asked for an artifact. She asked if she can take an artifact and take it with her, so that she will be able to prove her experience really happened. And in the following months after the abduction, before she was able to remember what happened through hypnosis, Betty's life was undisturbed. Everything was pretty normal. But for Barney, it was different. Like his encounter had affected him. He had nightmares, and he had trouble sleeping at night, and he had a recurring ulcer, and this led him to seek psychiatric help. And it was that decision that led him to to try hypnosis. So Virginia Horton's treatment by the aliens is similar to Betty Hill's, while Stephen Kilburn, Howard Rich, and Mac McMahon and David Oldham, they were all handled in the same manner as Barney Hill by the aliens, meaning that they treat men and women differently during the abduction encounters.